People, Deluded, I'm back again. Good old Soho Square, I'm passing through, so I thought I'd make a vid. Bit of a random vid, not going to be here long, and just more general Premier League things really. Let's talk about United. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm a fair man, I give praise where it's due. In the same way that we like fans of all clubs, Calvert-Lewin, Tammy Abraham, making you eat humble pie with putting in good performances, especially Calvert-Lewin. Fred. We heard Fred was a decent player. He looked a decent player in the Champions League. It looked acute for Manchester United. Now he's playing like the guy that he looks like on YouTube and the guy people thought him to be. Maybe not as much in an attacking sense, but Fred, has found some consistency in the United shirt. He looked like he could be on his way out at United at one point. He's now one of the first names on the team sheet. Consistency and just playing well. And I think the way Fred plays, he's not necessarily in the firing line for everyone to immediately see. But I think you've got to praise Fred for how he's improved. I'm not a frequent watcher of Man United, but I do think whenever I've seen Nemanja Matic, he has looked quite decent in his time as well, people. He's looked decent and he looks like, maybe he's playing for a new contract or what. But Matic has done all right. Bruno Fernandes to join in January. I mean, if he didn't hit the ground running, we'd be saying, it's mid-season, he needs time to adapt. And all of these things are true, not just for him, but people bought in August. But to consider he's joined United at a turbulent time in a team that's not necessarily the most fluid and, set up for an attacking player to thrive. And like I said, January, and obviously he's given a lot of hype. It's a long way to go, but I think Bruno Fernandes is a sick footballer. Like, obviously the assist and the goal that Martial scored yesterday, I think Edison should have done better, but it's quick thinking. I think what I like about Bernardo is he looks, Bruno, so I keep calling him Bernardo. Bruno looks to make things happen. He's obviously very good technically. He's obviously not afraid to shoot and try a difficult pass. Obviously, there's still a lot of adapting, maybe a lot more personality from him to come out with, from himself, just as he adapts to the league. And that's another thing. I think, if you didn't watch football and you didn't know they just signed him in January, it looked like he's been there for 10 years and whatever. And I know Pogba's name's, I'm not going to get into it, but his name in United is always thrown in. But I'm sure the manager, again, it might not be perfect, but I'm sure the manager must be wetting his mouth at some of the prospects. I mean, imagine Bruno Fernandes, Fred and Pogba in the same midfield. Again, Scott McTominay's strengths are in an attacking sense, saying that he scored a decent goal against City. But because of what he gives the team, he gives something for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to work with. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka looked decent going forward yesterday as well. I hope he's been working on that. And give credit where due, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer faces a lot of criticism, rightly so, but he got it spot on yesterday, man. I think they played well against City. Edison was poor for the 2 goals, but ultimately United won their individual battles. They went there with a game plan to remain rigid, counter-attack. But what I like from the manager and the players to realise City, it wasn't the City that they thought would turn up, to quickly change things. At a point or the period leading to their goal, they had 85. I think it was a 5-minute period. They had 80% possession, and they did their thing, and they've got the double over City. Now City have lost quite a few games and dropped quite a few points this season, but that's nothing for United. They made Otamendi and all the men there look like amateurs. Obviously Martial, I think he had a decent game defensively with headers, like Gary Neville said as well, and he's doing all he can to at least get in some thoughts with Deschamps for France, unlike Lacazette. But Lacazette, I got you, man. Man, I love Lacazette, but same way. So yeah, man, I credit where due for United. In relation to United, they're now unbeaten in 10 games across all comps, drawing 3 and winning 7. That's their longest run without defeat since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first 11 games in charge of the club. With that, on the flip side, Manchester City suffered their 7th defeat of the Premier League campaign, making the 2019-20 season in which Pep has lost the most league games in his managerial career. He's lost 7 league games, people, in a single top-flight season for the first time, like I said, in his career. And obviously, he allowed United to get to do the double over them. And I believe since 1961, Manchester United have completed a league double over Chelsea and City for the first time since 1960-61. Obviously, Sterling had a bit of a shock and was anonymous, but I mean, he becomes the 4th youngest player to reach 250 PL appearances at 25 years of age and 91 days. Only James Milner, Gareth Barry and Wayne Rooney have reached the landmark quicker. Gareth Barry was playing forever. Milner and Rooney, like Sterling, burst on the scene as teenagers. So good company to be amongst people, really and truly. Away from that, and I'm sure you've all seen the coronavirus and all of these sort of things. You're hearing Dortmund versus PSG is being shot. Italy in particular, I think a couple in France, but you're seeing it probably affecting Italian football the most. Not just Italian football, Italian society. A number of schools, colleges and whatnot are shut. Games are being played behind closed doors. And probably, I know they're still playing them behind closed doors, but you'd have to wonder how long before it potentially gets suspended. Over here in England, the sports ministers more or less said there's nothing really to worry about, but the longer this becomes a global concern, you look at America, who I believe Canada declared, California said a state of emergency. How longer can we just admit that, can we just keep this as just a cold and stuff, and then without scaremongering and things like that, people? You have to wonder. Jose Mourinho, Spurs obviously drops points, and again, it was all fun and games when Jose took over and whatnot. Now it's looking like, what was the point getting rid of Pochettino? It's fully gone Jose Mourinho mode. I don't think he's alone, and he has done some good. It's worth mentioning that only Liverpool and City have earned more points than Spurs' head coach Jose since he took charge, people. He's got 27, City and Liverpool have 32 and 48 respectively. You obviously saw Spurs, to be fair, rallied in the second half against Burnley and probably could have nicked it, but the damage was done in the first half. You saw the substitutions at half-time. You saw, Jose being very critical of Ndombele in particular, and it does have shades of Pogba. And I wonder how Ndombele feels, because the move to Spurs did take people by surprise. He was coveted by a lot of teams. He had issues with his fitness. He spoke about, he's a decent player, but he needs to get goals and assists. And he said Poch was the main reason for him going Spurs. Poch spoke of him highly. Jose doesn't speak of him like he's a dud. He recognises he's a top quality professional and has a lot of ability. But it's a direct contrast in which what relationship you could have had under one manager and then the other. And it's been a turbulent season. And considering you just got bought for 60-odd million, hasn't kicked off the way it would have thought. I think Cream always rises to the top, and he'll show he's a good player. I think he just has to, I don't want to say buy into Jose's thinking, but buy into Jose's thinking just so he plays you. You don't know the sort of character Jose is. I think Ndombele will be alright, man, but it's a tough period. It's been a tough period for two North London Liga big money additions to their respective clubs, really, and whatnot. Also, as well, I'm not going to get into it, but shout out Billy Gilmore, Chelsea as well. Another game he played well against, was it Liverpool a few weeks ago? Bossed it against Everton, played very well with his passes. Looks like he's made for that stage. You also saw Borja, Albanian striker, make his debut, and Adjerin, a player who they're trying to get to sign a new deal, who I believe has the ability to play Championship right now, minimum. And, if he stays in amongst that Chelsea team for the next 18 months, he will be the next one up, because he's got the technical ability, he's got the physical capabilities. And as a Chelsea fan, it's happy days. The club is doing what it can. A team like Chelsea that's been bullying youth awards, they needed to produce players for the first team. And you can see them dotted around, whether they're playing or not. Gilmore's come to the fray now, and it remains to be said if he can signify himself. But you'd imagine they're making 15, 20 million on him already. Conor Gallagher of Swansea, who's doing well, remains to be seen whether he'll get a chance. He signed a new deal, maybe protecting their investment. Brewster's doing all right over there as well, people. How much would he go for? If they ever decide to sell Tomori, Mount, Loftus-Cheek, Tammy, Reece James, Dijon Sterling, who's not had a look in, a bunch of other teams, they're bringing in ridiculous amounts of money. It feels like FIFA. And that's what Arsenal got to aspire to do. We have to aspire for our homegrown academy to do what Chelsea's doing. And I want to not only combine what Chelsea's doing, but the Dortmund thing in that. Obviously, they got Sancho and Highland. There's many more young players. Obviously, we need to get these players before they develop to that level where you look at Sancho now. He's 100 million. He'd be a lovely player at Arsenal, fitting well, but can we afford him necessarily if we get into a bidding war? No. Could you have tried to get him, which we did when he went to City, when he went to City, and both when he left City for 10 odd mil? You could say yes. Highland went for pennies, more or less. His release clause isn't the biggest, but you could imagine when the time comes, decent profit for Dortmund. We need to do them things. We need to combine. Again, not necessarily, but combine what Chelsea's doing and what Dortmund's doing, especially if we don't have funds and money and things. But yeah, and I know he didn't have the best of games at the weekend, but I think Holgate's done all he can to get into the England side, really, considering how some defenders are playing. And I think in relation to the goalkeeping situation, what's his face has a lot to think about, people. Southgate, I do think he'll go with Pickford and he'll retain faith in Pickford, but you look at the weekend, Alex McCarthy had a decent game in the defeat against Newcastle. Pope's been okay when called upon. Dean Henderson, again, international levels a different ball game, but you look at that and you look at Pickford. Obviously Pickford's got the experience, and to be fair, we're probably too close to the tournament to be playing with your number one, so Pickford gets it. And I'm not saying he was necessarily poor at the weekend, but it is concerning, really and truly, people. There's a lot of English players in good form going into the Euros, but there's also a lot of players in iffy form. You look at Dele Alli. Going into the Euros, you look at Chilwell, he's falling off a bit. Do you get what I'm saying? You look at Mount's probably not going to get an England's place now because of him. Foden at the right time starting to play now and all these things, but you get where I'm going. I'm going to get out of here because I've been here for a minute, people, but it's been a pleasure. I believe this will actually really be my last video in Soho Square. I had to go back to the old office to collect something. But yeah, people, it's always a pleasure. Make sure you comment, subscribe and do the rest. G.